So he's a data warehouse architecture expert, and he will be talking about real-time big data applications for investment banking. Not really?
Not really.
Yeah, then the topic is changed a little bit then. Okay, let's welcome Graham Mossman from Exasol.
Yeah, a couple of corrections. I came from Manchester, which is different from London. My topic is the big data Internet of what. I could have been talking about Exasol, which is a in-memory database, very fast and built here in Bavaria. But instead, I thought I'd make fun of some marketing types. And just to give this an extra edge, the chief of marketing for Exasol is in the audience tonight, so I hope he doesn't take this personally. I'm going to be talking about technology hype. I'm going to be talking about big data and the Internet of Things. I'm going to take you through the Gartner hype cycle. I'm going to tell you things that aren't true that you would, the hype people would tell you. And I'm going to talk about the future. And I'm going to try and do it on time. In fact, I might do it under budget. I'll keep talking really fast. This is an example of good marketing, I say. The peacock has a very complex message, which I would translate as, I am healthy, I am strong, I'm looking for love, and ladies, come and get me. It's quite a complicated message. But it takes this complicated message and presents it in a very pleasing way. And when we talk about big data is complicated. We've seen some examples tonight. Big data is all about very complicated hardware, complicated software, some real rocket science, and it gives you sometimes an answer that can only be understood by a statistician. Big data is complicated. But, and if you can actually get the big data ideas across in a very economical way, then that is a good thing. However, it's more likely with people marketing in the big data industry that the message becomes oversimplified. They totally ignore the fact that it's a complicated thing and start just giving you a very simple message very loudly, like these guys. One of the other issues as well with marketing is that, as well as simplifying things, things get padded, and things that you thought were this big end up being about this big. And this is King Henry of England, one of our most complicated kings. And he's actually packing some padding there. I'm sure that's a message that none of us need to have translated. Hype is common in the technical area. Gartner every year produced the Gartner hype cycle, which talks about all of the technologies that are in play at any given time. And any technology that's currently under development ends up on the hype cycle at some point. And Gartner tell a story. Technology starts here in the labs and starts up this axis. We have expectation, or just think about hype. And as the product comes out of the lab and people start talking about this technology and the first products get released and the first early adopters start using the products, the amount of hype becomes more and more. The message becomes extremely simple, extremely loud, and extremely padded, until you reach a point that Gartner called the peak of inflated expectations. And at this point, everything is being shouted, everything is simple, and everything is padded. At the moment, the Internet of Things stands up there, and big data was actually there last year. Big data has now fallen down. The amount of hype around big data has actually, it's very hard to believe, but the amount of hype has actually reduced. As sort of more realism has come into play, people realise this stuff is actually complicated. It's not actually for everybody. It's not going to solve everybody's problems. And some aspects of it aren't totally mature yet. This process, according to Gartner, will continue. They have the curve coming down here to what they call the trough of disillusionment. And in the trough of disillusionment, the original hype is almost blown away altogether. For example, we have virtual reality down here. A few years ago, virtual reality was up there, maybe in fact in the room upstairs on the curve. Everybody was talking about virtual reality. It was going to change the world, and it was going to be used for everything. Nowadays, we don't believe that. But what continues to happen, according to Gartner, is that these products continue up this slope of enlightenment. Great terms. It sounds like Dungeons and Dragons. The technology continues up the slope of enlightenment, and this time, instead of being this kind of hype curve, we have a slow maturing of the technology and a maturing of our attitudes towards those technologies. We've become more realistic about where these technologies can be applied. This process ends at, they call it the plateau of productivity. This is where a hot technology becomes one that we take totally for granted. Gartner have speech recognition up here as being just about to drop onto the plateau of productivity. Speech recognition, nobody gets terribly excited about anymore. It's on smartphones, it's in all kinds of applications. It's a mainstream technology, and there's no hype around it. It's just there. It's like Wi-Fi or oxygen or football. It's just something that you take for granted, and you only notice it when it's not there anymore. So, big data without the hype. If we take away the hype from big data, we're left with a very simple definition, actually. It's about the capturing of all available data and using that data for a benefit, for optimizing a process, for example, or creating a new service on that data. Two examples I can come up with. Optimizing the process, we can think of Amazon, for example, have taken big data and used it to turn their industry inside out. And Google have created a new industry from scratch based on this big data. It's even without the hype, I think it's a remarkable concept, and I find it difficult to understand why people hype it, because the truth is, okay, it takes some explaining, but I'd rather have the truth than just a lot of shouting. The Internet of Things, sensors, things that measure, are placed on things of interest, and all the available data from there is captured and stored in the cloud. And the rest of the definition is cut and pasted from big data, because the thing about the Internet of Things is that the way of capturing the data may be different, but at the back end it's one of the big data applications. So the Internet of Things requires big data techniques to get the job done. In terms of things they say that just aren't true, they say about big data especially that this is new. Not just new, but new with a capital N. This technology has never been seen before. We've never seen its like before. Its effects will affect our world forever, and it all gets a bit religious. It's a new thing. In fact, it's so new that new business rules apply. You can forget about the old way of valuing investments or making decisions. There will be new business rules that come with big data and the Internet of Things. And everywhere there are slides with Moore's law on it and a graph that shows an exponential growth in revenue for the business. And I'll get into that a little bit. And the last untruth I say is that it's ready for everyone now. It's complicated. It's a lot of different technologies. It requires so much. I don't think it's ready for everyone right now. I think Gartner have it right on the curve. There's a lot of heat that needs to come out of the message around big data before it becomes a mature part of the technology environment. So what is actually new? Big data, they are new data science methods, are new types of mathematics and statistics for understanding the results of these big data processes. There have been some step forwards in terms of Hadoop and exceptional in-memory databases like exasol make in Bavaria, and you should buy one of those. But apart from that, it's not a totally new situation. It's a incremental moving forward of technologies that have been around for a long time. It's just that nowadays it becomes economically sensible for us to use those technologies. It's not a totally new, groundbreaking situation. There's no one single Nobel Prize winning discovery. Nobody discovered big data. It's more complicated than that. And the same with the Internet of Things. Sensor technology is new, is relatively new. In fact, we've had it since the 60s with embedded computing in the guided missiles. Cloud computing is fairly new, and see big data for everything else about the Internet of Things. So again, it's not one single groundbreaking discovery. It's a number of things moving forward, and the economics of the hardware and software being such that you can actually do something with these technologies you couldn't do 5-10 years ago. So, like I say, every so often there is a new technology, and people say that the rules have totally changed. It happened in the 1840s in the UK with railways. It happened in the 1920s in America with radio. And the one I remember is from the 1990s. People lost their minds totally around the value of .com websites. The old world is all about profit and cash. People were encouraged in this new world to say that those things weren't important anymore. You needed to worry about eyeballs, clicks, page views, stickiness, different metrics about how successful your website was. The problem is that people prefer to be paid in cash, and the banks certainly insist on it. So a lot of these companies ran out of cash, never made a profit. Some of them never actually launched a product. It is an example of there being a hype around the situation, that this product is so new that you can't judge it like you would judge an investment in the past. One example about about big data, I was trying to sell Exasolution database to a customer, and I always ask them about Hadoop because we have great integration with Hadoop. Please ask me later about it. But the customer said, yes, we have Hadoop. So glad to hear it. And he said, yeah, we have over 50 nodes in our Hadoop cluster. Fantastic, wonderful. And we've had it for 3 years now. Great. What do you do with it?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's... no, if I can remember correctly, the actual answer was, we are evaluating the technology. So, a 50-node Hadoop cluster for 3 years, evaluating the technology. Somehow, I mean, this isn't a totally unprecedented story. People have lost their minds a little bit about big data and have stopped looking at what is actually important. If this had been another kind of business asset that had been idle for 3 years, especially the cost of running this kind of system and the staff you need, the guy would get sacked. But because it was so new and the new rules no longer apply, people tolerate this kind of thing. But I think as we see coming down the curve of big data, people will stop tolerating it, and there will be a rush to try and validate these investments in terms of the old-fashioned stuff. Does it make more than it costs, for example? But I have here the iKettle. It is a Wi-Fi connected kettle that you can operate from your mobile phone. It has a very simple business case, which is it saves 2 days a year in waiting time. And if you think about your day rate, multiply it by 2, even if you're on minimum wage, 2 days a year actually pays for this kettle. this kettle is only £99.99, which is £90 more than I've ever paid for a kettle in my life. But if it really saved me 2 days a year in waiting time, then it would be worthwhile, and I may have 3 or 4 of those and really start saving some money. It's a very silly example, but actually if you look at scaled up business cases, for example, I was reading a discussion about the Internet of Things from a large equipment company, which valued the whole impact of the Internet of Things as being $14.4 trillion. And I won't mention which.
That was General Electric.
Yeah, the name rhymes with disco. I used to be an accountant. When I left, I did a maths degree. I left university. I became an accountant, and I actually, it was part of my job to build business cases for my bosses, basically to cost justify the decisions they'd already made. And I would use all kinds of tricks, and all accountants know these tricks. There are ways of building business cases that are totally bogus and have been used all the time, going way back. I could spend 20 minutes on this, but I promised to be on time. Can we just take it for granted that you need a proper business case, not one that's been thrown together by a devious accountant? I talked about incremental growth. Everybody, I won't say all marketing people, because my marketing boss is here. It's a temptation in technical marketing to use Moore's law and use it as a justification that everything about computing doubles every 2 years. It doesn't. Moore's law is a very limited observation about the density of transistors on an integrated circuit. It's not even a good measure of power of computing, never mind a measure of how much money you're going to make out of it. So any business case that builds in an exponential growth of the business, just because it's got a diagram of Moore's law next to it, is totally bogus. Because, well, even if we take it for granted that, maybe some things do grow exponentially, things stop growing exponentially. Everything stops growing exponentially. It's a finite world with finite resources. Here I have a diagram showing the airspeed record. Starts in the early 1900s with the Wright brothers, 7 miles an hour on a bicycle-powered plane. There's a linear growth up until the invention of the jet engine, and then there's this great exponential growth with the jet engine, where you go through the sound barrier and beyond, up until about 1960. And somebody in 1960 would be forgiven for thinking, this curve is going that way, it could keep on going. So if you ask them to estimate what the airspeed record would be in the year 2015, they may have some radical answers, Mach 40, Mach 100. It's possible. But actually, the current airspeed record was set in 1976 by a Blackbird spy plane and has never been beaten. Point here, just because something starts exponential doesn't mean it's going to continue. So if you see a business case that says that everything's going to carry on exponential, forget it.
Just a quick question. How
Yeah.
did the record go down?
Do you know, I was asked that in London as well. This diagram is actually taken from Wikipedia, where everybody gets their information from. These are unofficial speed records, so it's unofficial and official speed records. You may notice that some of the unofficial ones were during periods of war, so there was not the kind of auditing available at the time for these records. And in fact, there are Blackbird pilots who claim that they've flown a lot faster than that to outrun a missile that was fired at them. But, you can't count unofficial records. But I've left them in the diagram. I don't think it detracts from the story. And there are lots of reasons why growth hardly ever becomes exponential. I'm not going to go into this slide at all. I think I can leave it at that. So, is it ready for everyone right now? Yeah, some of it. There is actually some good news. There are these new techniques for dealing with badly behaved data. I don't go with the velocity, variety, etc. Just call it badly behaved data. There are systems like Exasol for getting timely results out of this badly behaved data. The bad news, though, is around basically the data science part of the equation. The mathematics to actually build systems that make sense of this big data or run these big data services, and also to interpret the results. The thing about big data processes is that in most cases the answers are actually statistical. You don't get a straightforward answer. You actually need some kind of statistical insight to know what the answer is actually telling you. So, in short, these data science skills are in terribly short supply. These people are really expensive, even if you can find them, which is good news for people with technical skills like that. But the bad news is that big data is, I would say, is being held back by that lack of big data skills at the moment, rather than anything to do with hardware or software. Internet of Things, same problem. The shortage of data science skills. And as these two technologies continue through the hype curve, as it becomes a more mature technology, the demand for these skills is going to increase. I think that the thing that's going to stop the Internet of Things as well, again, is a lack of those kind of data science skills. But also they have issues around the actual process of capturing the data and storing it in the cloud. It's not my area. But there are non-technical issues with that need to be sorted out. A lot of social and political problems with putting sensors everywhere on everything that are not going to be sorted out easily. Certainly not going to be sorted out as easily as the marketing would have you believe. So in conclusion, big data and the Internet of Things will change the world, but eventually, because they're going to follow this hype cycle. They're not an exception to any technology that's gone before. They're currently overhyped. Some of that hype is going to disappear, and it's going to become a mature product. And both of these are going to increase this demand for data science skills. So, in conclusion, learn data science. There are going to be some, as well as extremely profitable line of business. These are some great problems to deal with. It's going to be an interesting time over the next 5 or 10 years. And I would encourage you not to believe the hype. Have a look at what you're being told. Is it oversimplified and is it padded, just so that they can make the message stronger? And don't jump until you have a proven business case. Don't be like these guys with the 50 node Hadoop cluster for 3 years. Make sure you have a proven business case and not one that's just been thrown together by a crooked accountant like me. If you do have a business case, you should be talking to Exasol. You can download a copy of our system from our website. You can get lots of information there. Follow us on Twitter. And did I make the 20 minutes?
Great job.
Close enough.
Yep. I think even though it was a little bit longer, it turned out a little bit longer. I think we did have quite good talks, and I hope that you enjoyed the evening as much as we did. And I want to thank each of you for taking the time to come out here, and for each of our partners, TNG Technology Consulting, for hosting us here at this venue and for providing the drinks and food. And also, like each of our sponsors, Cortical.io, Tableau, MarkLogic, Exasol, for providing speakers and partnering with us. Thanks a lot. If you would allow allow us to stay here for 15 or 20 more minutes, then there would be some networking. Please stay for that. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So like for 15, 20 more minutes, you could stick around, ask your questions from the speakers for whom you are interested. And thanks a lot again. Thank you very much for